Pelicans just can't avoid injuries. Like it just seems impossible. Every single time it seems like they're getting decently healthy, starting to figure some things out, there is another major injury for this team. I mean, now Dejounte Murray tears his Achilles first and foremost. Before we hop into the video and talk about how this affects the team at all, I hope prayers up for Dejounte, man. This is one of those injuries that can be a career-altering injury. It's a brutal injury. You never want to see this happen to anybody, and I hope that he's able to recover from this injury and come back at the same level that he was able to play at. But this does certainly raise some questions, I think, for the future of this Pelicans franchise, just because I'm not certain Dejounte Murray was really the point guard of the future anyway, but this 100% brings that into question. It makes you wonder what the thought process is with this team, because things are starting, in my opinion, to kind of take shape for this Pelicans franchise. They've been a lot more competitive lately. There's some guys playing really, really good basketball who I think look like the core to a real future competitive basketball team, and they're way behind the 8 ball this season. Of course, they're going to be really, really bad, and they're going to be one of the worst teams in basketball. But I will say, short term, I'm not sure this injury hurts them that much. And I'll say, I'm not trying to be insensitive when I say that, because I really hope Dejounte's okay. But number one, it should probably make them a little bit worse. And number two, it allows even more of a playmaking role to guys who have been playing really, really well, such as Zion, such as Trey Murphy, who is just taking a massive step forward in his game this year. 40 points, 15 of 20 from the field, 8 of 12 from 3. Really dominant offensive performance tonight in a last-second loss to the Celtics. Shout out Jason Tatum, hit a game winner. But basically did it by himself tonight. CJ had 17 on pretty bad efficiency. Jose Alvarado had 20 off the bench, but Trey Murphy basically tried to drag the Pelicans without Zion to a win by himself. Really impressive stuff from Trey Murphy tonight, who is taking a huge playmaking leap now in what, his 3rd or 4th season in the league. Looks to be a great player. And the thing about the Pelicans is, between him, Yves Missi, and like Zion, that's 3 guys in Trey, Zion, Missi, who I think are quickly becoming the core of this team in the future. Look, people are still discussing whether the Pelicans would trade Zion. If things continue to progress in the direction that they seem to be going, where Zion seems to be in basically the best shape of his career and is playing great basketball, I don't think they should trade Zion. And I think they have a real young core starting to come together. Now, Brandon Ingram will either get traded at the deadline or will be gone in the offseason. One way or another, he probably won't be on this team next season. CJ McCollum, the contract's not great, but he seems to be happy in New Orleans. I think he probably will be on the team next season. And you know what? Despite the poor contract, he's 45%, 37% from 3. He is a high-level scoring guard, if nothing else, and a decent playmaker with a positive better than 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio as well. The thing about Dejounte is, as much as Dejounte, touted player averaging 18 points a game, he was only 40%, 30% from 3 this year. Like, the efficiency's not there. And when you look at this team, CJ looks like, I mean, CJ's obviously that high level guard scorer. Trey Murphy is having the best season of his career by far and truly developing into an all-star caliber player. He's not going to make an all-star team this season, but he feels like he could be an all-star guy in the future. Look, Zion hasn't shot the 3 ball well all year, but he doesn't need to. He impacts the game so well despite not being a shooter that, I mean, he's up to 24, 8 and 5, and he's doing it, still turning the ball over more than you'd like, but the efficiency isn't quite to the next level that you used to from Zion, where he's 60% from 2-point range, but he's 54% from 2-point range, and you would expect that number to probably increase a bit. If he could ever become just a close-ish to league average 3-point shooter, like maybe a 33% shooter on 2 attempts a game, that would be huge development, I think, spacing-wise, because Missi also looks to be a real part of their future, averaging 9 and 8 basically as a rookie, showing some real potential around the rim and defensively, averaging a block and a half a game as well. Looks to be a guy that could certainly be a building block type center as a great role player in the future. And you wonder how a guy like Jordan Hawkins, who hasn't shot the ball that well this season, how his development could be. Alvarado's a good bench guard. Herb Jones, when he's healthy, is one of the best defensive players in basketball, and I think despite the fact he hasn't shot the 3 ball all that well this season, is a really valuable piece in his own right, although wouldn't be totally stunned if he got traded. I don't think it'll happen, but he feels like one of those guys who would have a lot of value around the league and could in theory get traded. And my question now becomes, with Dejounte out for the next year, basically. Realistically, you're not looking at Dejounte Murray probably being back until middle of next season. Where does that leave you if you are the Pelicans in terms of building towards the future? Because if you look at the standings right now, for the league-wide standings, the Pelicans are the 3rd worst team in basketball, but in order to have a bottom 4 record, they are now only about 3.5 games ahead of the Nets. or I guess below the Nets. That feels like a really small gap with how bad the Nets are and how many games are left to play, considering they've played 49, which means they got 33 left to play this regular season. I mean, just feels like the Hornets are, LaMelo's injured now. Brandon Miller's probably out for the season. There's so much, the Hornets are a disaster. The Nets are going to trade Cam Johnson and have traded pretty close to everybody else who's useful on their team. Maybe they'll trade Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe as well. The Jazz are atrocious, even with a fully healthy roster. They're still not very good. The Wizards are one of the worst teams we've ever seen in the history of the NBA. So you kind of sit here and go, yeah, I don't know if I really exactly see a path with the amount of talent they have and with guys like Zion and Trey Murphy and other players healthy and playing as well as they are. It's hard to see a path to a bottom 4 seed. With that being said, the 2025 draft class is one of the most loaded draft classes ever, and bottom 4 record or not, even if they have the 5th or 6th worst record in the basketball, they will have a real chance at a high pick. And if they were to get a top 2 or 3 pick and have an opportunity to draft somebody like a Dylan Harper or another impact player in this draft, that added to the core that they already have of Zion, Trey, Macy, potentially CJ McCollum, and some other guys would be really, really interesting. Like Dylan Harper feels like the guy who would be a really, really fascinating asset to add to this team. Although as a score first guard in his own right, you do kind of wonder, maybe they're a free agency destination if some sort of talented guard winds up becoming available at some point here in the next couple of years, because I feel like they do need a point guard. I'm not certain if CJ McCollum's that guy, and obviously Zion and Messi are already kind of non-shooters, so the fit for some of these other stars might not be amazing. Although if they got the number 1 overall pick, I feel like you have to take Cooper Flag and figure it out. Maybe at that point you do trade Zion. Maybe at that point, I don't know what you do at that point if they were to end up with the number 1 overall pick, because is Trey Murphy going to play the 2? Like, it would just become fascinating. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the path, basically, is what I'm saying. But I don't understand exactly what the strategy would be for this team long term, because the way that the lottery goes is going to determine a lot, I think, for this team. But this Dejounte Murray injury, as much as it sucks for Dejounte and as much as I feel bad for him, it's going to open the door even more for guys like Trey Murphy and Zion to develop as ball handlers, for probably this team to play a little bit worse as a whole for the rest of the season, which does not hurt them record-wise in the chase to get as good of a pick as possible. And it also, I think, opens the door even more for more roster flexibility going into next season as you try to build a team that has the talent to eventually become a contender. So while the Pelicans are bad this season and are going to be bad for the rest of the season, they have become a very interesting story to me. And look, this is a shame of an injury, and I will reiterate yet again, I really hope Dejounte Murray can get healthy and stay healthy after this and play better than he did this season, in all honesty, and hopefully continue to have a good, successful career. This is another indication, number 1, of the Pelicans just being cursed injury-wise, but this feels like it might even turn into, for the franchise, it could end up as a blessing in disguise. As rude as that might sound to say, and I don't mean it in that sense, but in terms of basketball, it opens doors for different things that generally probably weren't on the table. And you know what? It's going to make this team absolutely fascinating, if nothing else. So I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Be back with more NBA content very, very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.